Thank you so much for tuning into this channel. If you're new here, welcome. We hope that you enjoy these stories and consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's get started. It was an average day for him. He had woken up early, got ready, and left his house to head to work. He wasn't particularly looking forward to going in today. His boss had been on his case lately about deadlines being missed and targets not being met. And he really just wanted to stay home. But rent needed to be paid and mouths needed to be fed. So he got dressed, grabbed his lunch, and headed out. He walked past the park and decided to take a shortcut through it instead of walking around. As he walked along the paved path, he noticed a man sitting on a nearby bench feeding the birds. The man looked normal, like any other regular guy that liked to spend his afternoon at the park. So he didn't pay much attention to him and continued walking along his path. As he rounded a corner, he noticed another man sitting on a bench, also feeding the birds. He paused for a moment, wondering if he'd run into the same man multiple times by chance. But something about this second man seemed off. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he just couldn't shake the feeling. He turned back to where the first man had been sitting, but the bench was empty. Had he imagined seeing the man there? He shook his head, realizing that he must have. There was no way that there would have been two men sitting on separate benches in the middle of the park feeding the birds. He decided to just forget about it and continued walking until he saw the second man again. He was now standing up and he was watching him. It was then that he noticed what was wrong. The man's movements were identical to his own. He was simply a few steps behind him, mirroring everything that he did. But how was this possible? He could see that there was no one behind him in his peripheral vision. And yet, whenever he glanced back, he saw the man there. Was this some sort of weird stalker situation? Why was this man following him around the park? And why was he copying his every move? His heart began to race as he walked faster, trying to put as much distance between himself and the man as possible. But the man never seemed to get any closer or further away from him. No matter how fast he walked, the man was always right behind him, still copying his every move. It was uncanny and unnerving. His mind raced, trying to come up with a logical explanation for what was happening, but nothing made sense. Then he stopped dead in his tracks and stared at the ground. He knew exactly what was happening, but he refused to believe it. Could this really be? He took a deep breath and slowly turned around to face the man. He was indeed there, right behind him, just as he expected. But that was not what surprised him. What surprised him was that when he looked around, he realized that the man was not only behind him, but he was everywhere. He was in every single reflection that he could see. In the glass panels of the buildings lining the street, in the windows of cars that were driving by, even in the polished surface of the bird bath in the center of the park. The man was in all of them, watching him intently, but he wasn't actually there. As he continued to stare at the reflections, he saw that the man was not alone. There were others like him, all of them identical to one another. They were all behind him in every reflection, following him everywhere he went. Who were they? Was he being stalked by a group of people? Was this some kind of joke they were playing on him? But if so, why? What had he done to deserve this? Suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder and he jumped, turning around to see who was there. A little girl stood behind him, smiling up at him with innocent eyes. "What are you looking at?" she asked. He looked back at the reflections and saw that the man and the others were gone. Was it all just a figment of his imagination? Had he been stressed out over his job and just created this whole scenario in his head? He couldn't be sure. And honestly, he didn't really want to find out. He forced a smile onto his face and bent down to the little girl's level. "I was just admiring the beautiful reflections in the water," he said. She looked up at him curiously. "Reflections," she repeated, tilting her head to the side. Then she did something that made him smile, genuinely this time. She walked up to the bird bath and stood perfectly still, completely absorbed in the task at hand. Then she turned around and faced him, cupping her hands around her mouth. "Look," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "You're in the reflection." He laughed, feeling relieved that whatever had been haunting him moments before was gone. He looked into the bird bath and saw his own reflection staring back at him. The little girl was right. He was in the reflection. But as he continued to stare at his own reflection, he saw something that made him freeze. Standing behind him in his reflection was the man. He was in the reflection too, just as he had been before, except now he was closer than ever. He took a step back, but his reflection took a step back as well, keeping the same distance between them. He turned to look at the little girl, but she was gone. Where had she gone? Had she been here at all? Was this all just a dream? He pinched himself, wincing at the pain. This was real. He was really here. And that man was really there, behind him, in his reflection, waiting for him. He tried to run, but no matter where he went, the man was always there. He could see him in the reflections of the glass storefront windows, in the shiny chrome trim of the cars that zoomed by. Even in the dark-tinted windows of the buildings surrounding him, he was everywhere, always just a few steps behind him. He broke into a sprint, pushing his way through the crowds of people on the sidewalk, weaving between the parked cars as he ran, desperate to escape whatever it was that was chasing him. But no matter how fast he went, the man in the reflection always kept pace with him. He could feel his eyes burning into his back, could feel his presence like a dark cloud hanging over him. He dared to glance back, expecting to see the man close in on him, but he wasn't there. Instead, he saw that the man had disappeared. He was no longer in any of the reflections. Had he given up the chase? Was he finally safe? He took a shaky breath, trying to calm his racing heart, trying to convince himself that it was all over. But as he did, he noticed something in the reflection of a nearby shop window. The man was there, standing directly behind him, watching him with cold, soulless eyes. He was closer than ever now. Could he feel the man's presence like a physical force pressing against him? He whirled around, desperate to get away from him, but there was nowhere to go. The man was everywhere, behind him, in front of him, beside him. There was no escape. He could see the man's lips moving, but he couldn't hear what he was saying. Then the man opened his mouth wider, revealing a set of sharp, pointed teeth. And he screamed, a long, drawn-out scream that echoed through the empty streets. He woke up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. It was just a dream, he told himself. Just a nightmare. But as he looked around, he realized that the nightmare was not over. The man was still there. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at him with those same cold, soulless eyes. "Hello," the man said, his voice raspy and low. "We meet again." And as he reached out a hand towards him, he saw the reflection of that hand in the glass nightstand next to him. It was a hand like any other, except for the fact that it was slightly transparent, as if it were made of water. And at the end of that finger, he saw a single drop of blood.